More and more riders have come to appreciate the look associated with what I would call classic Americana, and manufacturers around the world have responded in recent years to try to exploit this niche interest. This movement has actually been on and gaining momentum for a few years now, and we are starting to see some fairly bold designs from some of the big names. Honda has two such designs available for the 2016 model year. First is the Stateline, the sole surviving member of the 1300 custom line, having outlived its siblings, the Interstate and Sabre cruisers. The Fury joins the Stateline as a sort of brother from another mother with lots of shared DNA, but with a few critical differences, and it represents a very bold design concept indeed. Design historically, the overseas interpretation of the custom culture from back in the '50s through the '70s is, interesting to say the least. Sure, the Honda Rebel has a certain charm, but it is really a mishmash of features that doesn't exactly target any specific era or bike, and has come to have a place in the hearts of many. Unfortunately, the Stateline sort of falls into this visual category. To my eyes, the parts don't really match. We have a full rear fender and deep scoop solo saddle that is in keeping with certain old-school cruiser styles, but then the swoopy gas tank, raked front end, and curved downtube veer sharply toward custom chopper territory. The result? A confused collection of parts that doesn't really do more than suggest at its collection of influences. But the Fury, now that is another thing entirely. The designers targeted the outlaw chopper culture of the '60s and '70s, and managed to turn out a fairly faithful interpretation. A big, skinny, 21-inch front hoop and cut-down fender fit right in with the 32-degree rake of the forks. The upper lines flow across the same swoopy tank as the Stateline, but with one important distinction: it fits well with the rest of the bike. As does the deep saddle and cut-down rear fender. An air-cooled V-twin completes the package, and at 52 degrees, the V-angle doesn't immediately scream import at a casual glance. Last but not least, Honda's boldness really shines through in the stretch of the downtubes that couple with the rake for a truly custom look. Now, if I could just add a tombstone taillight and a coffin tank, I think we would really have something. Oh, a slap shifter and a Kickstarter would be nice, too. Chassis as always, the frame dictates the direction of the overall look, and that's certainly the case here. Both bikes boast double downtube, double cradle frames, and quite a bit of rake. The Fury carries a 32-degree rake and quite a bit of stretch, while the Stateline has distinctly curved downtubes and a 33-degree rake. Beyond that, both bikes carry their seats just below the 27-inch mark for a classic, low-slung look and feel that fits well with the rest of the bike. In spite of the fact that both run a standard, yoke-style swing arm, the hidden rear shock and frame geometry manages to pass on the suggestion of the old rigid frame lines. You might expect the trail numbers to be rather large with such radical front ends, but the 4.6-inch trail on the Stateline is fairly standard for a cruiser. I was really surprised to see only 3.6 inches on the Fury, but I guess looks can be deceiving after all. The Stateline runs 41mm, right side up forks that fit right in with the front wheel and fender, plus they provide 4 inches of wheel travel. A hidden monoshock supports the rear on 3.9 inches of travel. On the Fury, a set of beefy, 45mm forks provide the same 4 inches of travel, but the rear monoshock only gives up 3.7 inches of travel. Not stellar, but within reason for sure. Wide tires cap the 17-inch front rim and 15-inch rear, and contribute even more to the low and wide look of the Stateline. The Fury comes jacked up just a bit more with a 21-inch wheel up front and 18 in back, sizes that also add to the custom feel and radical panache. Brakes are consistent across the board, with a 296mm disc and single pot caliper to bind the rear wheel, and a single, 336mm disc and twin-pot caliper up front. At over 650 pounds, this is a lot of bike to tray and control with a single front brake, so maybe the optional ABS isn't such a bad idea on these rides. Drivetrain Honda's 1312cc mill powers these two rides with a 52-degree angle that's pleasing to the eye, and doesn't wreck the effect builders were going for. Blackout jugs house an 89.5mm bore and 104.3mm stroke with a common crankpin for that typical V-twin cadence and torquey bottom end. I've got to say that the bike could look cooler without the radiator, but it certainly runs cooler with it. Plus the water jacket helps attenuate some of the mechanical noise from the 3-valve per head valvetrain. A computer-controlled fuel injection system in the 38mm throttle body maintains a proper stoichiometric ratio, and a digital ignition system manages the timing for the dual plugs in each head. The Fury and the Stateline come geared for 46 miles per gallon and 45 miles per gallon, respectively. This isn't too awful bad for a 1300cc plus engine, and makes it suitable for use in a really bitching commuter bike. A 5-speed transmission and shaft drive send the power to the rear wheel, and as much as I prefer anything but a shaft drive, I have to admit they aren't as undesirable as they were a few decades ago. Price: both the Stateline and Fury roll for a base MSRP of $9,999, with ABS as an available option for a smooth ground extra.